Next bit of news, Amy Cragg has announced her retirement. Gordon, she won the 2016 U.S. Olympic marathon trials, went on to finish ninth at the Olympics. She also made the Olympic team in 2012 in the 10,000 World Championship bronze, 221 PB in the marathon. A great career all around for Amy Cragg. Missed the last couple of years due to health issues, but 2 Olympic teams, was definitely a key part of U.S. women's marathoning for several years there. I'll remember her most for those Olympic trials in Los Angeles because I was there. It was extremely hot. There was the battle there between her, Flanagan, and Linden. She slowed down, helped her teammate Shalane Flanagan for a little bit, and then there's obviously that iconic picture where she's holding Flanagan up after the finish when both women ended up qualifying. But just a superb career for Amy Cragg all around, making two Olympic teams and running one of the fastest marathons by an American ever.
All right. So what is, in your mind, the most impressive feat? The top 10 finish at the Olympics, her 221 in Tokyo, which would be her PB, her bronze medal at Worlds in 2017, or her winning the Olympic trials?
Again, I could be biased because I was there, but it was just the trials. Like, it was a pretty epic race just because the conditions were so bad. And if you remember going into that, I mean, the year it was tough. That was U.S. women's marathoning is just getting better and better and better, right? We talked about how tough the 2020 team was to make, and then 2016 was hard as well because you had her, you had Flanagan, you had Linden, you had Kara Goucher in the mix. Kellen Taylor was there. That was an awesome race. I mean, 2012 though was pretty cool too because she missed it. She got 4th and then comes back and makes it in the 10K. I always like those stories. Sometimes those stories are happening within the span of a week because someone misses in the 8 and then they come back in the 15 or the 5 and the 10. Hers, it was several months in the making. She said, I think she said in the Runner's World article that the medal meant a lot to her, which World Championship marathon doesn't get a lot of credit, but on the women's side over the past couple of years, I'd say they get a higher percentage of their top people competing than on the men's side. Yeah, I mean, for me, it'll be the trials. That's what I'll remember the most.
Yeah, but that's what you remember. But is that what you think is the most impressive?
I mean, the most impressive is probably, is it the bronze? It might be the bronze.
Yeah,
because there were some good people. There were some good people in that race. It was probably but I mean, shoot, I mean, 9th in the Olympics. That was a crazy. So they went 7, 8, 9. The U.S. in the Olympics that year. That's pretty good depth from the U.S.
yeah.
But yeah, the bronze that year in the World Champs was, again, it was along this long line of U.S. women being really competitive, and not just one U.S. woman, but a slew of U.S. women being competitive at major championships, with Flanagan winning New York City, Des winning Boston, et cetera, like all the top 5 finishes for Hasse. So it probably is, in terms of just what's the first thing you'd mention in a recap of the career, you'd probably say World Championship bronze medalist. I'm like a big medals over times person, like when you're recapping the career, unless the time was a world record or an American record, because the time is, it kind of can change with the era, but the medals give you a better look at like how they stood within that era relative to their competitors.
Yeah, I agree. I would say I think the most impressive thing she did was the 3rd place in 2017. There's something about like beating your like peer fellow Americans just doesn't seem as impressive as beating the people all over the world. I don't know. So,
Sure.
She probably, I bet you in that Olympic trials marathon, everyone in that field she had beaten once in her life, probably before in a different event, whether it was a road race or a track race back in college. She had raced against these fellow athletes for 10 plus years. So like that win is just one of many in my mind. Whereas getting a medal at a world championship in that moment, I feel like is a bigger deal. But again, the winning the Olympic marathon trials is pretty cool and a very impressive feat in its own as well. So,
I think the
but yeah,
reason why I always put a lot of weight on trials is because the pressure, because there's that
true.
fear of loss. Like when you get to the championship, it's like, okay, I'm here, just got to make the most of it. But like everything feels like on the line. So anytime people come through in that moment, it feels certainly elevated. But that's yeah. So I'm looking at the top 10 that year in the world champs. So Rose Chalimo won it, 2:27:11. Edna Kiplagat, we know the career of Edna Kiplagat. She got the same time as Cragg, but got silver. Um, and then it was Philomena Shenich of Kenya in fourth, Demise, Eunice Jepkirui, Hella Kiprop, Mary Dababa, the rest of the top eight, Trengove of Australia, and then Berhane Dababa. Like there's some good names in there. Again, like I said, sometimes the world championship, because of a variety of reasons, doesn't end up being that good. But you could see that field being pretty similar to a New York or a Boston type field, and getting third in there. Obviously, if she was third in Boston or New York, that would be at the top of the list as well too. So, congrats to Amy Cragg on her career.